we are on today 137 of going through my old journal, and the quote says, "Never test another man by your own weakness." It says, "Do you feel like life's testing you, and in what way? Do you look at other people's lives hoping to gain clarity about yours, and does it help?" So actually, I think this goes along with what I was trying to explain yesterday, but didn't do a very good job at it. But if you're following along, just take a minute to think about how you would respond. And let's see what I said. All right. Do you feel like life's testing you? Do you look at other people? So I said, I don't think I've ever felt like life was testing me. There's been a couple of rough patches, but nothing too bad. At no point have I ever felt completely hopeless, which makes me wonder how a lot of people survive from day to day. Like, if I have negative, depressed thoughts sometimes, how do people with real problems feel? Because yeah, I don't feel like I have that many real problems, and the fact that sometimes I get like, which it hasn't happened in a while, it was really just for like a point back in like 2020, 2021, where I was just feeling really down and kind of hopeless. And then I felt so much guilt for feeling bad because I was like, I don't even have a bad life. Like, I have a home, I have a car, I have a job, and like, why do I feel this bad right now? And I would just feel so guilty because there's people that have like things so much worse, and it was, yeah. Anyway, let's see what else I wrote. Yeah, I said, how do they find the will to keep living when terrible things have happened to them? And I mean, like, my life hasn't been like perfect by any means. But yeah, like some of the really bad stuff, like, I've lucked out that hasn't happened to me. As far as looking at other people's lives for clarity, I'd say I do that to some extent. Like, I know the internet and social media aren't depicting real life, but in some instances, I've come across people and ideas that have given me new perspectives on things. Throughout my life, I always felt like I was a little different from other people, particularly those in my town. Not by a lot, and not in a way that made me like visibly stand out. I don't think, but now that I'm thinking back, I'm just wondering if I was different, but I was just like oblivious to it. I don't know. Yeah, I said, but I was never really, and I've talked about this before, I was never really hung up on marriage or kids or settling down. Like, I assumed it would happen, but I never envisioned it. Then on YouTube, I came across people with similar views and living lives that I could see myself living. Now, TikTok is expanding that. I'm thankful to have access to these resources that women before me didn't have. And like, yeah, even since whenever I wrote this, like I said, I wish I would have put the dates on it, but TikTok has gone wild with people like sharing stuff. And like, I don't know why TikTok is so different. I don't know why it's just turned into this, and it's so different than like Instagram. It's so crazy that Instagram is like about, trying to show your perfect life. It's very visual. But TikTok, people are just like on there with no makeup, just being open and sharing things. And there's so many more people that so like with YouTube, you can come across stuff on YouTube, but the algorithm is so like, I feel like the algorithm has changed since when I was like actually finding a lot of good relevant stuff to me. I'm just like, I have a hard time even getting on YouTube anymore because just keeps sharing like the same things, and my brain, like, I like to see all this new stuff, but I think it's like pushing, like, oh, based on what you've looked at before, we're gonna give you this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm over that. Like, let's get on to something else. But even with YouTube, it was like there wasn't that much content. There was, you know, and the people that I would see were like far away, or it was just like a couple people that I was being exposed to. And I'm like, and I thought, like, okay, well, I'm not completely different. There's at least some people that think this way. So, but on TikTok, like, however they've got their algorithm set up, it is like I keep getting a lot of the same stuff, but it's more, I don't know how to explain it, but I've gotten on like the female side of TikTok, and it's like all of these feelings that I've had about, you know, having families and things, it's being validated, and it's like it's spreading. Like, more women are like, why do we need to get married? Like, why do we need to have kids? And that's just always something that I've inherently thought, but I hope it doesn't go too far on the other side of, like, there's like a lot of infighting right now with women who have kids, and then there's even women that are like child free that are, you know, going too far, like, you know, talking bad about women that do have kids, and how terrible it is, and how you're locking yourself in this, you know, relationship. And so I'm not like that. I'm like, if people have a good relationship and they want to live like that and they want to have kids, like, that's them. And I've mentioned before, like, I've known people or had friends that were just motherly, you know, like, they like to take care of people. They, you know, when they become mothers, I'm like so happy for them, because I know that they would be good mothers, and, you know, they have a good partner, and, you know, and like I've said, I've probably fortunate in my life to kind of see both sides of seeing like a bad relationship and a good relationship. My parents, my dad was terrible. But then I also spent a lot of time, I was practically raised by my grandparents, and they had a great relationship, and they did have kind of like, they had that not totally stereotypical relationship, but it was more of like the stereotypical nuclear family type, kind of. But like, my grandma always worked, so I've always seen like the women working, because my grandma had her own beauty shop in the house that she worked from, and my grandpa worked too, but it was like my grandma took care of more of the household stuff, but then my grandpa took care of a lot of other things. So it was like a partnership, even though it was split, you know, by those, you know, stereotypical norms of like the woman cooks and the woman does laundry and manages the house. But then my grandpa also did a lot of things around the house. You know, he maintained the house. He, you know, maintained the yard. He was always like keeping busy and doing things. And like, yeah, if my grandma needed help, he would help her. Like, I remember there are certain times of the year that they had friends that would grow green beans. This is like just one random memory. And I remember there was like once a year, their friends would drop off like these bags full of green beans, and we would all, my grandpa, my grandma, and then me and my sister always wanted to help. We would sit in the living room and have this little bowl, and like, or maybe it wasn't green beans. It was something that we had to like open up pods and like, you know, just get the beans out or whatever. And like, yeah, like when that would happen, my grandpa would come in and help. So it was just kind of, it was a good distribution of labor, I guess, I felt like in that household. And my grandma was happy with that. She doesn't want to go out and, you know, mow the lawn, but she would help with yard work sometimes if she had time and wanted to. So I saw that. I saw both sides. But then on the other side with my mom, I saw my mom worked full time and then was also responsible for like everything in the household and everything to do with us. Like, my dad didn't do anything related to that. And didn't even like, it was weird. He worked, but like my mom paid all the bills, and his money was just kind of like extra money to like, it was kind of like my mom's money was for the house and kids and everything like that, and his money was just his money that he would like buy us things sometimes with his money, and usually like unnecessary things, vacations and things like that, which was nice. Like it was good to have that extra money to be able to do these extra things, but like my mom's money was what maintained the household and bought groceries and, you know, all this stuff. So yeah, but anyway, going back to like the point, looking at other people's lives, yeah, I like that I have access to, I think that's a good part of social media. There can be some negative things, but to me, I feel like it's been an overall benefit for me to see how other people have like different views from the norm, and then I've been able to see some of that on social media, because, you know, they say, well, social media is fake. Well, so is real life. When you see people out in public, if you're not actually in their homes, you're also seeing a fake version of them. You're seeing what they want you to see. So I don't think that that part of social media is that much different than real life. But it's also like people are sharing, you know, the other side of things on social media. And I think that's been helpful too. So, and yeah, to gain clarity, like, and I know people are saying that like this ADHD, oh, everybody's saying they have ADHD, everybody's saying they're autistic now, but being able to hear people that actually do have it and explain like how their brain works, that has been like a game changer for me, because now I'm like thinking about how my brain works, and I think I'm pretty good at like not, I think I'm pretty good at like working out like what's actually relevant to me and what's not, and just taking what is, because what is relevant to me, and I just said that, and what's not, you know, like just because somebody says something, I'm not like, oh yeah, that's me. But if somebody says something and I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, I think that part of it does make sense for me. And so it has been. And there's also like a lot of psychiatrists and stuff that are making channels and sharing all this information. And, you know, even people that are like in the trades, like, you know, whenever COVID happened and people couldn't go to get their hair cut and stuff, like people were making content on like how to cut your hair at home. You had like stylists doing that, and, you know, doing housework. Like you can find YouTube videos that kind of like help you do that. So, yeah. And a lot of like political stuff. Like I feel like I understand more about the world and how, I'm going to finish with this. This is getting kind of long, but I was looking, so in one of my classes, so we were talking about misinformation in the news, because, you know, a couple years ago that was like it's still a big thing, I guess, misinformation. Like, yeah, there is misinformation out there. And this lady was talking about, in my program, there are a lot of like older people in my program, and this lady was saying that like, you know, there wasn't as much division, and like we were talking about why some of the older people on like Facebook and stuff seem to be more prone to get sucked into the misinformation, to like just see something, read it, believe it, and share it like it's the truth. And this woman said, she's like, well, whenever I grew up, we would see something in the paper or see something on the news, and that was the truth, you know, like there was more. And she was trying to, I think, insinuate that like they weren't exposed to as much misinformation because there wasn't as much information out there, and like everybody was getting the same information. And she was kind of insinuating that like that was true information because it was more controlled, that, you know, if you're getting news, it's from like a news anchor for like a big news company, and now you're able to get news in all these other places. And so I always thought like, well, yeah, maybe there were more checks and balances for news back then, and so these people who are older, whenever they see something that looks like it's coming from a news source, they just assume that it's been vetted. And then I mentioned that in this class that I'm taking now, that someone in my class had like pointed that out, that like just the information in the news they were getting was different and it was more vetted. And he's like, was it though? And he said, was the news that they were getting true, or was it just that everybody was getting fed the same news and so everyone just assumed that what they were hearing was true? And I got to thinking, I'm like, of course not. Like, we already know that all these things that people believed, you know, we've gotten evidence now decades later that like it wasn't true. Like, what was the event that got us into the Vietnam War? Like, I think it's come out now that like that didn't happen. And you know, so I think there's always been misinformation, but now it's kind of like the misinformation isn't controlled by, it's not as controlled anymore. And where am I going with this? Actually, I've lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that. But like, I think it's actually a better thing, because now people in the younger generations, I think, have more ability to look at things critically. And yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, whenever I hear someone say something, I'll look at it and I'll think about it. How does this relate to my life? Is this accurate to me? And I'm able to better, you know, be like, okay, well, let's look at the facts and things like that, and try to find, you know, whether it's truthful information. I don't know, this went off track, but anyway, that's what I put for that, and I'll be back tomorrow with day 138.